Hi everyone. Today I'm going to read George and Martha, One Fine Day by James Marshall. 5 stories about 2 best friends. Story number 1, The Tightrope. One morning when George looked out his window, he could scarcely believe his eyes. Martha was walking a tightrope. "My stars," cried George. "I could never do that." "Why not?" said Martha. "It's tons of fun." Martha's a hippopotamus. Do you think a hippopotamus can walk on a tightrope? Can you walk on a tightrope? It's fun. You should try it. "But it's so high up," said George. "Yes," said Martha. "And it's such a long way down," said George. "That's very true," said Martha. "It would be quite a fall," said George. "I see what you mean," said Martha. Suddenly, Martha felt uncomfortable. For some reason, she had lost all her confidence. She began to wobble. Poor Martha. George realized his mistake. Now he had to do some fast talking. "Of course," he said, "anyone can see you love walking the tightrope." "Oh, yes," said Martha. "Certainly," said George. "And if you love what you do, you'll be very good at it, too." Martha's confidence was restored. "Watch this," she said. Martha did some fancy footwork on her tightrope. Story number 2, The Diary. Whenever Martha sat down to write in her diary, George was always nearby. "Yes, George," said Martha. "I was just on my way to the kitchen," said George. Said Martha. I like the eyes in this book. You see how he's looking sideways and she's looking sideways. Martha decided to finish writing outdoors. "How peculiar," she said to herself. "I can still smell George's cologne." Then Martha heard leaves rustling above her. "Aha!" she cried. "You were spying on me." "I wanted to see what you were writing in your diary," said George. "Then you should have asked my permission," said Martha. "May I peek in your diary?" asked George politely. "No," said Martha. She looks kind of mad now. George has one gold tooth. That story is in a different book. Story number 3, The Icky Story. At lunch, George started to tell an icky story. Martha strongly objected. "Please, have some considerations," she said. But George told his icky story nevertheless. "You're asking for it," said Martha. When Martha finished her lunch, she told an icky story. It was so icky that George felt all queasy inside. He couldn't even eat his dessert. "You're the champ," said George. "Don't make me do it again," said Martha. "I won't," said George. He turned green, didn't he, from feeling nasty. Story number 4, The Big Scare. "Boo!" cried George. "Have mercy!" screamed Martha. Martha and her stamp collection went flying. "I'm sorry," said George. "I was feeling wicked." "Well," said Martha, "now it's my turn." "Go ahead," said George. "Not right away," said Martha slyly. Suddenly, George found it very difficult to concentrate on what he was doing. "Any minute now, Martha's going to scare the pants off me," he said to himself. He's putting ketchup on his oatmeal. Ugh. "Maybe she is hiding someplace," he said. George made sure that Martha wasn't hiding under the sink. Do you think a hippo can fit under the sink? During the day, George got more and more nervous. "Any minute now," he said. But Martha was relaxing in her hammock. "I'm sorry I forgot to scare you," said Martha. "That's all right," said George. "It wouldn't have worked anyway. I'm not easily frightened." "I know," said Martha. The last story, the amusement park. That evening, George and Martha went to the amusement park. They rode the Ferris wheel. They rode the roller coaster. Whee! They rode the bump cars. They were having a wonderful time. The bump cars are my favorite. But in the tunnel of love, Martha sat very quiet. It was very, very dark in there. Suddenly, Martha cried, "Boo! Have mercy!" screamed George. "I didn't forget after all," said Martha. "So I see," said George.